The couple had done everything right. New kitchen, fresh paint throughout, a beautifully landscaped garden. Their estate agent told them they'd sell within 3 weeks. 6 months later, the property was still sitting on the market. The asking price had been slashed twice, and they'd lost over £28,000 compared to what their neighbour had sold for, a house in noticeably worse condition. The difference wasn't the finish. It wasn't the location. It was one feature, a single characteristic baked into the property that buyers kept flagging on viewings, that mortgage surveyors kept noting in reports, and that quietly, relentlessly, killed every serious offer before it reached the finish line. That story isn't unusual. I've seen it play out dozens of times across England, and what makes it genuinely painful is that the sellers never saw it coming. Their estate agent hadn't warned them. The original survey hadn't flagged it as a selling risk. They only discovered the problem when it was already costing them money they could never recover. That's exactly why this video matters. Because right now, in 2026, the UK property market has shifted in a way that makes these hidden features more dangerous than they've ever been. According to Rightmove's latest data, there are currently more homes available for sale than at any point in the last 12 years. Buyer choice is at a level not seen since 2014. More than a third of all properties currently listed have already had their asking price reduced, with the average cut sitting at just under 7%. In a market where buyers have 10 properties to choose from for every serious offer they make, any reason to hesitate becomes amplified. Any excuse to negotiate harder becomes leverage. Any feature that raises doubt in a buyer's mind becomes a financial weapon used directly against you. When supply was tight, buyers overlooked imperfections. They had to. Now they don't. And that changes everything. So today we're covering 10 features that consistently damage resale value in the UK property market. Some you'll have heard of, several will surprise you, and at least 2 or 3 may cause you to look at your own home very differently by the time this video ends. This is the one that catches people completely off guard. Homes built using concrete panels, steel frames, timber frames, and/or prefabricated systems, many of which went up in the post-war decades, are classified by mortgage lenders as non-standard construction. And here's what most buyers don't realize until it's too late. A significant number of high street lenders simply won't mortgage them. That doesn't just affect your buyer, it affected you when you bought it, whether you knew it or not. When you come to sell, you're immediately cutting out a substantial portion of the market. First-time buyers using standard mortgage products are often excluded entirely. The buyers who remain tend to be cash purchasers, and cash purchasers know their leverage. They offer less, and they're right to, because the restricted buyer pool gives them every negotiating advantage. But properties with non-standard construction typically achieve between 8 and 15% less than comparable standard build homes in the same street. That's not a cosmetic issue, that's structural and permanent. If you own a leasehold flat or house and the lease has dropped below 80 years, you are sitting on a ticking clock that is actively costing you money every single month. Here's where it gets serious. Once a lease falls below 80 years, the cost to extend it increases dramatically due to something called marriage value, which legally must be shared with the freeholder. The shorter the lease, the larger their share. And crucially, most mortgage lenders won't touch a property with fewer than 70 years remaining. At 60 years, you've effectively lost a massive portion of your potential buyers entirely. What surprises people is how invisible this feels while you're living there. The lease length doesn't affect your day-to-day life in any meaningful way, but the moment you go to sell, it becomes the central conversation. Buyers' solicitors flag it. Surveyors note it. And suddenly, you're either funding a costly lease extension before you can sell, or watching your asking price fall to reflect the risk your buyer is absorbing. This one has quietly become one of the most significant resale issues in the UK, and climate data suggests it's getting worse, not better. Properties in areas designated as flood risk zones now face a dual problem. Buildings insurance is either extremely expensive or in the most affected areas, nearly impossible to obtain through standard providers. Without affordable buildings insurance, there's no mortgage. Without a mortgage, your buyer pool collapses to cash only. The brutal reality is this: you may have never experienced a flood. The property may have never flooded. It doesn't matter. If the Environment Agency's flood risk mapping places your postcode in a high-risk category, buyers see it immediately when they search. Many walk away before they even book a viewing. Buried inside the deeds of thousands of UK properties are legal restrictions that most owners never read and many don't fully understand. Restrictive covenants can prevent you from extending the property, running a business from home, keeping certain animals, subdividing the land, or making structural alterations, among dozens of other constraints that vary wildly by property. Here's what happens when these covenants aren't disclosed clearly early in the process. Buyers discover them during conveyancing, panic, and either renegotiate aggressively or pull out entirely. Either scenario costs you time, money, and often the sale itself. If the covenant is particularly limiting, especially anything that prevents common modern uses like home offices, extensions, or outbuildings, it will materially affect what buyers are willing to pay, and some will simply walk away. If there is one issue that can stop a UK property sale completely in its tracks, it is Japanese knotweed. This invasive plant is capable of damaging foundations, drainage systems, and structural integrity. More importantly for sellers, most mortgage lenders require professional treatment plans and guarantees before they will lend against a property where knotweed is confirmed on site, or even on adjacent land. What most people don't realize is that you have a legal obligation to disclose it. Failure to do so can expose you to legal action from the buyer after completion. Properties with knotweed can sell, but they sell at a significant discount, typically in the range of 10 to 15%, and the treatment costs, which can run into several £1,000s, often fall on the seller to manage or price in before the sale. The word subsidence on a survey report is one of the most powerful deal killers in the UK property market. Even where subsidence has been previously treated and signed off with a structural engineer's certificate, and it remains on the property's insurance history forever. Future buyers will see it, their surveyors will flag it, their lenders may demand additional reports at the buyer's expense. Historical subsidence, even where fully resolved, tends to reduce achievable sale price by anywhere from 5 to 20%, depending on severity and location. And if active movement is detected, you are looking at a situation that can stall a sale for months, while investigations and remediation work are carried out, assuming the buyer doesn't simply withdraw. Common in older properties, particularly Victorian and Edwardian terraces that haven't been modernized, single-skin walls have no cavity, which means they cannot be insulated using standard cavity wall insulation methods. This directly impacts energy performance certificate ratings, II, and since EPC requirements have been tightening in the UK, particularly for landlords, but increasingly for buyers seeking affordable running costs, a property trapped at an E or F rating faces growing buyer resistance. In practical terms, buyers are now factoring energy costs into their affordability calculations in a way they simply weren't 5 years ago. A property with structurally poor thermal performance is a harder sell, and achieving a higher EPC on single-skin construction often requires expensive and disruptive internal insulation that most vendors neither anticipate nor budget for. This one operates almost entirely on psychology, but psychology drives decisions, and decisions drive prices. Properties within clear sight line or close proximity to high-voltage electricity pylons or substations consistently attract lower offers. And studies have shown price reductions ranging from 2 to 20% depending on distance and visibility. The challenge is that there's nothing to fix. You cannot move the pylon. You cannot negotiate with the national grid. You can only price the property to reflect the reality of reduced buyer appetite and accept that a portion of your potential market will self-select out of the viewing process entirely based on what they can see from the front of the house. This is subtler than the others, but financially significant in aggregate. Properties where the only access to one bedroom runs through another, common in certain period conversions and older terraced layouts, trigger immediate concern from family buyers, the largest single-buyer demographic in the UK residential market. Similarly, the properties where bathrooms are accessible only through bedrooms, or where living space flows in a way that feels impractical for modern life, see meaningfully lower offer rates and longer time on market. Estate agents rarely mention this directly because there's nothing to list as a defect. But viewings generate hesitation. Hesitation produces lower offers, and lower offers compounded across 3 or 4 bidders produces a final sale price that reflects the layout's limitations, whether it was ever explicitly named or not. This is the feature that sellers most consistently underestimate and buyers most consistently research before viewing. With flight path data freely available online and planning portals accessible to anyone, buyers now arrive at viewings already knowing the noise profile of a property. Consistent aircraft noise and proximity to distribution centers or visible industrial sites within the immediate vista are features that cannot be mitigated and cannot be improved. Properties in these locations do sell, but they sell to a narrower buyer pool at a price that reflects the compromise the buyer is accepting. In a high-supply market like the current one, that narrower pool means longer time on market and harder negotiation at the end of it. Here is the thing that ties all 10 of these features together. None of them are secrets. Buyers' solicitors find them, surveyors flag them, insurance providers price them. The only people who are consistently surprised by their impact are the sellers. People who bought without fully understanding what they were taking on, or who bought in a different market and are now discovering that the rules have changed. At the 2026 Market Rewards Clarity, buyers have options, they have data, they have time. Any feature that creates doubt, uncertainty, or additional cost in a buyer's mind will be reflected directly in what they're willing to pay, or whether they make an offer at all. If you're buying right now, check every single one of these against any property you're seriously considering. Commission a full structural survey, not just a mortgage valuation. Read the deeds, not just the sales brochure. Check the EPC certificate, the flood risk maps, the planning history. And if you already own a property with one of these features, the time to understand its impact on your eventual sale price is now. Not the morning your estate agent calls to tell you the 3rd offer has just fallen through. Because by then, it's already cost you more than you wanted to lose.